Hi folks, it's Vince here again with the Tinkerer's Workshop. Today I've got a couple of old socket chisels that I picked up at a flea market. They were a couple bucks each, and I thought I'd make a video on how I go about restoring a chisel and putting it back into service. I think I'm going to focus on this one because I noticed that it's marked Stanley. So this looks like a Stanley 750 chisel. I have a few of these already and I really like the size and the feel of them, so I'm going to work on this one. These are called socket chisels, obviously, because they have a socketed end. The handle fits in there. There's a taper on the end of the handle that fits in that socket. It's a form that was very common in the past. You don't see them quite as often today. Most of the chisels being made today have a tang on the end that fits into the handle. So I like this style, so I'm going to go ahead and get started, and we'll see how it turns out. So you can see that this is fairly well pitted and covered with rust. Not sure how well this will turn out when we're done, but like I said, it was only a couple of bucks, so not really out anything if it doesn't turn out. But let's go ahead and get started on it and see what we've got underneath. I've got some evapor rust here, and I poured some into this plastic tub, and I'm going to go ahead and drop the chisels in there. And this evapor rust is great. It removes rust. You just let it sit there and it'll take all the rust off. You don't have to really do any work at all. So while those are sitting in the evapor rust, I'm going to go ahead and get started on making a handle. I've got a handle from an original Stanley chisel, and I'm just going to go ahead and use this as a pattern to make my replacement handle. I'll use some calipers here just to take some measurements off the different parts of the handle, and then I'll transfer them to the blank that I'm making my handle from. Well, I'm not really much of a turner, so I didn't show a whole lot of detail on how I actually turn this handle, but between scraping and sanding, I managed to get it fairly close to the original that I was shooting for. This original one has a couple of leather washers on the end that just act kind of as a shock absorber as you hit the chisel with a mallet. So I'm going to make a couple of those and I'll add it to the end. They just fit over this little tenon that I've turned on the end that will be similar to the original. To make the washers, I've got a thick piece of leather here, vegetable tan leather, and I just use an arch punch like this. And then I use a smaller one just to make the hole in the center. Alright, that glue is dry now, so I'm just going to come back and trim this leather flush with the rest of the handle. We got in a couple samples of this finish at work, so I thought I'd try it out on this handle. This is Skelton Saw's Peacock Oil. It's a finish that is used by Shane Skelton on his handsaw handles. I've never used it before, but I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot on this handle and see how it does. Alright, these have been in the evaporust for about 3 days now, so let's take a look at what we've got. Well, that one looks pretty good. It's pretty clean. Wipe it off here. Looks like it took care of all the rust. This one's, that's kind of weird. It's got discoloration all along there. I don't know what that's from. I may take these over to my bench grinder. I've got a deburring wheel on there, so I might try that and see if we can't clean these up a little more. Alright, this looks like a grinding wheel, but it's actually a 3M Scotch-Brite EXL deburring and finishing wheel. It's a woven abrasive material that's wound around a wheel, and it does a really good job of cleaning up finishes, surface finishes on metal. cleaned both of these up on the deburring wheel. Couldn't find a manufacturer's name on this one. This one, like we said, says Stanley on it. But boy, it's like both of these had been underwater or something. They're really pitted. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit so you can see that. The Stanley one especially, it's just got pitting all over. Don't really care so much about pitting on the top, but the back is really bad too. So that's going to take quite a bit of work to get that flattened out and smooth. Noticed it also has a bit of a low spot right there near the edge, but by the time I remove all this pitting, that may go away on its own. So probably take it over to the 1x42 belt sander and work it over a bit there. Well, I've reground the chisel. I did the back on the belt sander and got rid of all the pitting. There's just a tiny little bit left in this corner here, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. And I accidentally rounded the edge a little bit right there, just as I was bringing it up to the belt. I kind of dipped down and hit that, but it's far enough back from the edge of the chisel that I don't think that should be a problem. On this side, I ground a new bevel at the bench grinder. So I'm going to take this over to the bench stones now, and I'll flatten and polish this back a bit and hone an edge on the bevel, and then we should be ready to match it up with the handle. I finished honing the bevel and flattening the back, so now all we have to do is put the handle in. And just a couple of things there to note. Often when the original handles disappear, people will start hammering on the end of the socket, and it'll make it kind of mushroomed out like that. So you need to go and with either a file or a grinder, go ahead and just grind all that off. And same thing on the inside, getting either a small little round file or you can use a Dremel tool too with a little grinder bit that you can take that little lip off the inside so that the handle will seat in that taper. So way I usually do this is just put the handle in the socket there and kind of move it around, twist it a little bit, and usually it'll leave a little transfer mark on the wood. So wherever it's dark, that means there's contact. So that's good because you want to see contact on the whole length. That means that the taper is the right angle. So we're good that way. I guess I typically like there to be anywhere between 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 inch space between the top of the steel and the edge of the handle there. So this one's a little bit thick, so I probably will take a little sandpaper and just wrap it around here and sand that taper just to narrow it up a bit, and then I'll keep trying it until I get a fit that I like. So I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera because it's just sanding. It's not very exciting to watch, but I'll do that and then I'll come back after I get it all fit. Alright, I've got the handle installed into the socket. I used a mallet, just hit the end to seat it into that tapered socket, and it's a nice snug fit. There's no wiggle or play in there, so that's what we want. That'll keep it locked in place. If these do come loose, because sometimes the wood shrinks and the handles will fall out, you can use epoxy to epoxy these in. I typically don't do that. I just put it back in and give it a good whack with a mallet, and that seats it back in its spot. This chisel's not going to win any beauty contest because it still has all this pitting and aging, but it's kind of cool in a way just to see that it's got some battle scars on it, and put back into good condition like this, it's ready to go. It should last for another several decades. So there you go. That's a Stanley 750 chisel, and thanks for watching.